Welcome to the Red Alert Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chap, and guys, I am here with a celebrity of epic proportions, Cindy Barry. Now, she might not be Emmy nominated. She might be like, what is it, Rotten Tomato nominated for whatever. I don't know. She's not in the Sega, so she could be on this podcast.
That's
But
right. That's right. I'm currently SAG cardless, but that's okay. I'm the better half of this show. I'm the better host, you see.
Oh man. You know what? Someday I'll get to your spot in life and I'll be all gold.
Yeah, I'm just teasing you. Everybody knows that you're the brains behind all those awesome graphics and all the stats and all that stuff. I just am a casual observer here. I've just been.
No, let's get it correct now. Let's get it correct now. You are writing a damn book about hockey, and you have several people that you talk to on a routinely basis. One being Darren McCarty. You also talk to me, who am I? And then and then you talk to other people. So you're just all over the place.
I try to be in the best way, though. Really. Yeah, I'm all over, but not in a bad way.
So the last time we talked to was before the season.
Mm-hmm.
We're 3 games into the season now. It's not much. It's not like we're like 10 games into the season or whatever. We're 3 games into a season, but they're 2-1, so that's good.
Sample.
That's a good sample size. But what's like been your key takeaway?
Well, my key takeaway really showed up yesterday, and that is that maybe finally the Red Wings have solved their problem in net, which has been an ongoing problem and something that has been challenging them for the last several seasons, not just last season, but several seasons. And so, as we've said many times, you can score 5 goals and that's great, but if your opponent scores 6, you got a problem. So we've always had a challenge in net. And even when we got Billy Husso, who I thought was a great addition, and Billy's done great, the problem is that there was just way too much put on the guy. He had nobody to help him. And so now maybe in James Reimer, we have got somebody who can help out in net. So that's what I wouldn't say I'm the most surprised, but I am the most pleased to see that development.
Yeah, I think that's been the most surprising thing. I think one of the most surprising things to me is the goal scoring. I'm pretty stoked about that. Obviously, when you get a guy like Alex DeBrincat, you're hoping that you get the goal scoring, but it's the secondary goal scoring. I think if I remember right, there's like 7 different players on the roster that have one goal. So, I mean, you got Rasmussen that scored yesterday. Daniel Sprong, which when we were at training camp, you were the one that said Daniel Sprong would be pretty damn good. Yeah. He's up good with the billing. So I haven't been shocked about anything. I was more concerned with goaltending, obviously, like, being a former goaltender, but
you weren't losing the faith, were you, Joe?
No, but James Reimer, he did a pretty damn good job yesterday. He had a shutout. He's a third Red Wing goaltender to have a shutout, and last year Billy Husso was the other one.
That's right.
So it's pretty funny to see that happen because obviously the Red Wings need a goaltender behind Billy Husso. So to see James Reimer shut out the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Blue Jackets aren't like a team that's gonna light up the scoreboard or anything, but they're pretty damn good. They're young and talented. They got Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine, and they have some good players, but they're just a young team. They obviously, with Adam Fantilli as their centerman, they're gonna kind of struggle a little bit. But hey, the Red Wings took care of business.
Well, that's it. And look at what they did against the Lightning here in that home opener, right? I mean, that was really exciting stuff. I mean, the Lightning, they're nothing to mess with now. They didn't have some of their key personnel, but that's not the point. They are still a solid, very recent Stanley Cup champion. So you can't take that lightly. And you can say
it's still in most of their players. It's like people were talking about the Lightning game the same way they were talking about the Lions-Chiefs game.
Yeah.
You say under no circumstances do you say sorry for a win. No circumstances.
Oh, absolutely not.
Second of all, when you play a team that has a championship pedigree like the Lightning or the Kansas City Chiefs, the one thing that you can say without a doubt is that, like, they have a championship pedigree. So everyone on that roster has been through the gauntlet, and they're still going to be playing the same way. Like, you're not going to just get an easy game. So for the Red Wings to win 6-3 in that game, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it's the start of good things to come. And they mentioned that it was partly the crowd that really got them got their confidence up. And hopefully now what I really hope to see is that they move some momentum, that they get some momentum going, because I don't want them to think, oh, I don't want them to be in a position where started off great and now, things just go kind of downhill from here. I don't want to see that. I want to see them building on the momentum. Now that you've got it, it's one of the things you can really use to your advantage.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing that they did really, really good in that game was they played a very aggressive game. They were aggressive on the forecheck. They made all the right plays, and it wasn't the best defensive game I ever seen in my entire life. No, but through a course of an 82 game season, you're gonna go through games where you might have to win 6-5 or 5-4. It's not gonna be this easy gauntlet where you're just gonna shut down teams. But the problem with the Red Wings last year was they had to score to win. They couldn't win just playing a defensive game. And this year it seems totally different.
It does. It does. It seems a little bit different. I wouldn't go so far as to say they're like the Lions, even though I'm kind of wearing my Lions blue and silver. You
Mhm.
like that?
Mhm.
Not going to a Lions game. I'm going to a birthday party, but so no Red
Yep.
Wings jersey today. But I wouldn't say that anyone's ready to drink the red Kool-Aid yet. They haven't earned that just yet, in my opinion. Just the way the Lions have, and why everybody's drinking their blue Kool-Aid. I totally get that. And I'm 100% behind it. And I think they're the real deal. The Red Wings aren't that yet, but they could be. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping actually that what the Lions are doing and what is happening in Detroit kind of, I don't say rubs off on the Red Wings, but helps to give them inspiration into building that momentum and running with it. Because they are starting to show signs of maybe a change. Maybe they're different. I mean, a lot of people are saying same old Lions, same old Lions. And you and I were saying, no, they're not. No, they're not.
Nope.
And people, I don't think, believed us, Joe. I really don't. I thought they thought we were kind of blowing smoke and it was going to be like every other time. And I think Red Wings fans might be feeling that way. They might be feeling like, oh, this is just kind of the same old, same old. They're going to start well like they did last season and then they're going to fall apart. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And let's hope the Red Wings will prove all those wrong who think that that's what's going to be happening.
Yeah, and if we go back to this was the weekend review. The Red Wings lost to the New Jersey Devils 4-3, which I don't think you or me have I don't take offense to that loss, to be honest. The Devils are a great team. You heard me before saying that I think the Devils might be the Stanley Cup team. They beat the Lightning, as we said, and they beat the Blue Jackets. So all in all, it's been a great start to the season. But you're right about we're not drinking the Kool-Aid right now, but there are signs that they are doing a better job of playing within their structure. And some of these free agents that they got, like got the spare, JT Compher,
Yep.
uh, guys like that are just making a supreme impact on not only the way that they play, but that the other areas of the game. Like they're playing a little bit differently than they have, you know. And it was funny because I was listening to Ken Kale and Paul Woods on the way home Saturday, and they were saying that like having JT Confer, having Andrew Kopp, the one thing it does to this team, is it allows them to, go through the lines. Like if they're not sending Larkin out there for every first line faceoff, you could put JT Confer out there, you could put Andrew Kopp out there. You're not really going to get a big drop off. You're not going to get that huge drop off you would get if you sent like Pew Suter out there or whatever. In years past, you would send a guy out like that, and the drop off would be huge. So that's the one thing I take away from it.
Well, the other good thing that I think we're seeing is the development of our rising stars. You see Moritz Seider, I think, rebounding a bit from his sophomore slump that he had. He's, I think, playing some very, very good hockey right now. Lucas Raymond, who I think people were expecting to take the same trajectory as Moritz Seider. And then when he didn't quite measure up last year, people were, I think, beginning to doubt and talk about trades and all this kind of thing. But now you see Lucas Raymond coming into his own and starting to define himself and find an identity as far as who he is with the Red Wings. I mean, that hit into the bench, that was classic. It had to be on all the highlight reels all week long because I loved it. I thought it was great. Maybe that teed it up for what we ended up seeing from your guy Clem Costin.
Yeah, and let's talk about that right now because if we go on to the players that are surprising us the most, I think Clem Costin takes the cake for it. Obviously, I like him because of the physicality and the way that he's willing to drop the gloves. I think the one surprising player that I was the most shocked about up until now is JT Confer, and I shouldn't be shocked because of the way he played last year, but playing on Colorado coming to Detroit, it's a little bit different. It's not the same thing. So seeing JT Confer play the way he has, I mean, look at the leaders like JT Confer. He's up there he's in top 5 of goals, and he's the top assist man on this team right now. So it's pretty interesting to see that, and like obviously what Steve Yzerman has been trying to do is build a depth depth through the lineup, and you can see that right now.
Well, you can, and that's evidenced as well by the fact that we have multiple people scoring goals. You've got your guys who you expect. When we brought them on the roster, you expected them to produce. They had produced elsewhere, and you expect them to see similar things in Detroit. And a lot of times when that happens, you don't. For some reason, guys get moved, and then they don't produce the way that they did. And that's not the case here. We see these veterans who we've brought over in free agency and in the off season showing us exactly what they showed and sometimes better than they did in the previous season. That's a very good sign. And you've got your youngsters who are developing and starting to get more reliable. And the one thing that the Red Wings have been missing for the last several seasons, and we've talked about it, and it was kind of the word of last season, and that is consistency. Yep. We need to see consistency, because until we see that, really all bets are kind of off. And so I won't be really comfortable and feeling very, very good about it. And I won't start making the Kool-Aid until to be drunk until we start to see more consistency. And it's not that they don't have it. It's just that I don't think we have enough content yet. We don't have enough games yet to really make that determination.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough games. Obviously, we've only played 3 games, but if you look at the way they've been playing, I kind of think the New Jersey game, I thought they deserved a better fate. I really do. But Billy Huso let in that goal from the side from Jack Hughes, and I know Jack Hughes is a great player, but you just can't let in that goal. I thought they deserved a better fate in New Jersey. They play Tampa Bay at home for the home opener. They played a really good game. Yesterday, they played a really good game. I'm really intrigued to see what they do for the next 4 games, which they have 1 road game, and that's a pretty big road game that they have coming up too.
And we'll have to see how the Red Wings do on the road. I mean, right now they're kind of
0-1,
right? 0-1 on the road, 1-1 on the road. No, yeah. So we'll have to see that. But you talk about road games, and road games are important. But one of the things we talked about last year that they struggled with, and this is what I'm going to be looking for. You're looking kind of see where they're going to be on the road. I'm going to see where they're going to be at home, because we had a really great show last year that I thought was, I think is one of our most listened to. And that is when we talked about the Wings' failure on home ice, and that their record wasn't good enough on home ice. When you have all of the advantages, when you have the hometown crowd, when you have the fact that you can sleep in your own bed at night and come in the morning for the game, when you've got friends and family there, when you've got your own, all your own facilities and all of those things, that you have every advantage. So your home team advantage has to be taken advantage of. You have to be able to put up big numbers at home, and the Red Wings struggled there.
Yeah, the first 2 games, the first game they played at home, I loved seeing it, but we've seen last year that they won the home opener and then they started dropping some in November.
Right.
Like you said, the home is the biggest one that you're looking at. I am too, because I think that's one of the bigger flaws of that team last year. They couldn't win at home, and like you just said, we repeated in that podcast too, where we were talking about you have nothing to, you're not staying in a hotel, you're not eating hotel food.
Yeah.
You're at home, you're probably with your family, so you're better off. But for some reason they came to LCA and they weren't the same team. Like their road to home splits were so porous. It was kind of shocking because if you talk to anybody who ever played, like if you talk to Darren, your friend, Darren McCarty, if you talk to any
that
football,
guy,
yeah,
what does he know?
We have a tweet from him. If you talk to any NFL player or baseball player, they always tell you you got to win games at home because you never know what's going to happen on the road. Because especially in hockey, you get the last change on the at home. So if you're on the road and that's where you're going to try to win all your games. I got a bad news for you. It's probably not going to be that great of a season. And one of the things that you could look at is the Lions, right?
Yeah.
They're 4-0 on the road. Okay, that's a pretty damn good thing. There's now 3-1 at home, but if you win your road games and you just you win most of your home games, you're a playoff team no matter what. Like you have to keep that fine line. Like if you go 500 on the road, you can go what 6-7 games at home, and then you're probably in the playoff discussion in the
Yeah.
NHL. So that's what it comes down to. I think that's what we were talking about last year because we looked at the home road splits and the way the goals against, the goals for, like it was just totally different last year.
That's right. And so, to a certain extent, I think you can say we have the potential to say that this is not the same old Red Wings. It looks very, very different. Look at the personnel turnover. I don't know what the number is in terms of percentage of
9.
on ice personnel turnover, but I'm willing to bet you we're probably 40% new.
Mhm.
And that's considerable. That's considerable. So why wouldn't we expect the potential for a changed season, for a changed team? I believe that's exactly what they are building. The question is going to be, is this new Red Wings team going to be better than the old Red Wings team? They might end up with their own challenges and
Yeah.
maybe have some systemic problems that still haven't been worked out, whether that means, in net or that means on defense. I think, quite frankly, I think our defensive pairings need some work. I think
Yeah.
it's great that we've got offense. I mean, we needed that. We did need that. But I think we're going to have to do a little bit more in the defensive pairings. But I think that's going to shake out, as the year goes on, right?
I think that he's gonna try to go through the lineups and try to figure out the best matchups for matchups for the guys, like the best pairings for these guys too.
Sure.
I thought yesterday they played a damn good game defensively. Now there was a point in the second period where it was starting to get a little bit squirrely, but James Reimer stood on it. Really gave him a chance to win by making all the saves that he made. So that was a crucial to see. Obviously, the one thing that I take away from it is like I think in years past the Red Wings were not adapt to handle injuries at all, right? They're
Mhm. Right.
they didn't have any depth, and when they called up a guy, usually it was like a guy that wasn't ready, like like Elmer Soderblom. Was Elmer Soderblom ready last year? Absolutely not. I don't like.
No.
Obviously, he started off pretty good, but then when you get to that regular season, you start going through the games. It gets a little bit different, and there's different things that happen in a game where it kind of takes it a little bit differently. But I think this time around they do have depth, especially since they can call up people from the AHL who should have made the roster. If you were saying it last year that Evanson wouldn't make the roster. Casper wouldn't make the roster.
Right.
Soderblom, like these are guys that you thought were going to make the roster, but they didn't because the roster is so much better up in Detroit.
Well, that's right. That's right. And it's not that we won't potentially see these guys later on in the season. As I think I mentioned last week, or I know we were having a talk pre-show or whatever, I think the whole goal, the whole plan that Steve has here is to bring these veterans who can get us to the playoffs so that he can take his young developing core that he's got coming out of Grand Rapids, who I think ultimately will be your Stanley Cup champions, at least quite a few of them, and give these guys some playoff experience before they have to actually really, go to the show, go for the cup. And so I think that's part of the plan. So I think you will see them get some NHL ice time, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I mean, they've got to get there first, right?
Yeah.
So, but they're certainly not. I don't believe they were part of the plan for the roster, and I really don't think they earned those roster spots at camp. Although they're getting better, and that's
Yeah, I just think that they last year when they had the roster the way it was, like I just felt like you could have had it's a lot different this year, and like you just said just a moment ago, like you're going into this roster and it's more adapt to winning right now. And then when you bring up the kids like Casper, when you bring up Edvinson, when you bring up those guys, they're coming into a winning situation, which is easier. And I was talking to someone and he said that's the best way to do it because the way it works is if you come into a situation as a young player and you go into a losing situation, you're gonna have to press your game. Like you're gonna be pressing way too much. You're gonna be trying to do things that you're not supposed to do.
Right.
And then when you come up to a good team, you kind of find that happy medium and you try to gel in with them. That's the way it goes. So that's what I look at with this team is like, okay, you if you do bring up the young kids, they know what to expect. They know that this is a more stable, foundation, especially with you know, Cider playing up there, Wallman, Mata, Petrie, Hole, Gossa Spare. Like you're coming up to a better situation than if you came up last year. So that's the one thing.
Well, I think too, talking about the home game, it was a win, which was great. But I think that first period, there were quite a few people who were worried. I know I was watching that game and I was getting text messages from former players and former coaches. And I had one former coach who's coached many of our Detroit Red Wing alumni who ended up becoming Stanley Cup champions. And he was texting me, he said, man, they're so bad. They're so bad. I hate to tell you this, but they're so bad. And I think it's just they needed to settle in. I think they needed to settle in. But one of the things that I noticed was, man, the only guy playing defense out there is Mo Sider. Where is everybody else? And so I'm glad that finally, maybe it was between periods, there was a little chat in the locker room or something like that. And they said, hey, look, we've got to step it up out there or else we're going to lose this game in front of your home crowd. You don't want to do that. These people are so excited. You hear how happy and excited they are to be here. And I think there was something to that effect that happened in the locker room that said, hey, look, we've got to turn this around. And then they did. And then they came out and it was a whole different game. And I think they had settled in quite a bit and maybe kind of realized what they were playing for. So, but I can see where there was some concern in the first period of that game against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I feel like when you play a team like Tampa Bay, that was a good game in the second game. I thought the first game you were coming out to the Devils, which they're playing their home opener. They're expecting to be a really, really damn good team. So
Yes.
you're going into just to play with them is pretty impressive because this is a Devils team that's really, how much I like the Devils this year. They're a good team.
Yeah.
Like they are freaking fantastic. And the guy that was their goaltender, Vicek or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
he really stood on his head, and he helped that Devils team kind of navigate through the first period. And then the second period, Jack Hughes took over because Jack Hughes is a really, really good freaking player.
Because Jack Hughes is Jack Hughes.
But it just goes to show you though, like the Red Wings, if you would have took the Red Wings team from last year, right, and they would have went to New Jersey like they did for this one, I think they would have got blown out because there were times in that game where the Devils were just dominating, and especially in the second period. And the Red Wings kind of held serve, and then they started doing their thing in the third period, and then it became a back and forth kind of thing. But the Red Wings were skating with them. That's the one thing I take away from this whole thing is I like the way their speed, their team speed is really good. I think that's an underrated kind of thing to this team right now.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that we saw in training camp too, is that, I mean, like, man, these guys are fast. Man, they're fast. That's kind of what I found myself saying oftentimes watching them. It was definitely different. I said, one of the things in camp that we saw that was different from previous camps or previous teams is they're faster than they used to be. So that's great that they've added speed, and that with what we saw out of Lucas Raymond and Klim Kostin is that they've added some muscle as well. So good, a little bit of grind and a little bit of gusto, and you never know where that might take this team. You just got to give them a chance, give them some time, and let us take a look and see what the next half dozen games or so show us.
Yeah, and the one person I'm really taking I'm liking to is Klim Kostin. I don't know if you've seen this tweet, Cindy, but Darren McCarty tweeted. He said some guy named Cody, aka Evolve, which he's verified, so I don't know. He says, I love Klim Kostin. At Darren McCarty would be proud. Your star gets hit. You set the tone with a big hit back and are willing to drop the gloves from. That's some old grind line type of stuff. Let's go, Red Wings. And then Darren McCarty says, I'm beaming over here, finally. Look,
yeah,
I think we were both in this category before, but this team really needed a punch. Like, they needed a guy who was going to go in there and just whoop someone's ass, because I think every good team that you see in any pro sport, like look at the Phillies in the World Series right now. Bryce Harper is a freaking he's a grease ball. Like the guy is a dirt bag. But the Phillies love this guy because he's a grimy, gritty type player, and he's good. You look at all the Red Wings teams, like what was the one, in the 2000, 1998, 1997, what was the one line that really stood over the rest? It wasn't the Russian Five, it was the grind line for a lot of people. So
Right.
I think if you look at championship teams, they have to have that punch. Like they have to have a guy that's going to be mean and nasty and kind of set the tone. And that's what I'm looking forward to Saturday because they play the Ottawa Senators Saturday. Um, you go to Ottawa, you go to a team that kicked the shit out of you those 2 games before the trade deadline. They really killed your season, to be honest. And you're gonna go to Ottawa, and I feel like they have with Rasmussen back, with Klim Kostin, like they have a team that's like they can go in there and they can start playing physical.
And they need to. And I think that's what the other thing we've been saying, and I think a lot of people have been saying for a long time, is that you can't have a playoff contending team without having a physical element. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, especially in the postseason, is who can take the hits and who can give them. That's what it takes, because you've got to protect your goal scorers and you've got to be able to use some intimidation on the ice. You can't just be someone that, we're gonna play keep away here. We're gonna, you got to get in the corners and you got to get in the scrums, and that's what it's all about. And you've got to have guys willing to do that. That's one of the things what people loved about Tyler Bertuzzi here was he was that guy, but it was the only guy we had like that. I
Yeah.
think on this roster, I think you've got several. I think you've got Klim Kostin, which is great. I mean, that guy just doesn't care. I mean, I told you what I saw at training camp. Wasn't sure about him, but he made sure to let young Jonathan Berger know what was going to happen to him or what to be prepared for if you're on the ice with a guy like that. But you got Michael Rasmussen, who's gotten a lot more physical, starting to use his size, and then now you've got, surprisingly, I would say little Lucas Raymond, but you don't expect a guy like that to be getting physical. But
No.
these guys that was unexpected.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just kind of taking over a culture. Maybe the culture is getting a little bit different. And then they're going to protect their goal scorers. They're going to protect Dylan Larkin. They're going to protect Alex DeBrincat. They're going to protect these guys who are going to know that they can go out there and they can get aggressive, moving the puck forward into the offensive zone. And they don't have to worry about getting their clock clean because someone's going to take care of that.
Well, the one thing about Alex DeBrincat, I would say, is a lot of people, they labeled him as small and they said that he couldn't play, hockey the way that it's supposed to be played. But if you watch Alex DeBrincat play, or you watched him play during his, rise, with the Blackhawks, with the Senators, he's a little feisty too. So he's not just a guy who can score; he's a guy that could actually play physical, and that's what you want out of your guy. That's a goal scorer. So I look at the team throughout, and I go, it's much more physical. I think that Lalonde was trying to. I think when he said on 97.1, but we're trying to make them a little more physical than they have been. I think he kind of hit it home like pretty quickly, and I think that if Coach Lalonde gets Dan Campbell in that freaking locker room, they're gonna come out with like they're gonna bite kneecaps at the end of it.
Maybe they already have. I was kind of wondering. I'm like, maybe Dan Campbell's already made a.
Coach Lalonde was at Lions training camp when I was there, so
right.
Never know.
Right. Yeah, maybe he's kind of taking some notes too from Dan Campbell and trying to say, hey, how's this guy turning it around? Because there's no doubt about it. Dan Campbell has turned around the Detroit Lions. And I think that, Derek Lalonde is looking at that going, the people are looking to him to do the same thing. So maybe he can take some of the elements of Dan Campbell's, playbook and apply them to his Red Wings and see if he can't get similar results. I think that's a smart move on Derek Lalonde's part. And, Newsy is a totally different type of personality. I mean, he couldn't be any more low key. If Dan Campbell is that outrageous, Newsy couldn't be any more.
They're
the opposite of that.
They're total opposites. But the way I can kind of gel it together is you do want your team to have kind of like the way that they play. I'm trying to think of the word. Identity. You want them to have an identity of what they're going to be. Like, if your identity is going to be, you're going to be a team that goes up and down the ice and scores a lot of goals. I mean, cool that you could be the Toronto Maple Leafs because that's what the Maple Leafs do. But in the reality of things, like, sometimes when you have an identity of like we're just gonna grind you to pieces. I mean, that was Vegas Golden Knights last year. I mean, I know people want to say that Jack Eichel is a superstar, but the reality of the situation is if you want to classify Jack Eichel as a superstar or Mark Stone, the reality is the situation is there's not many stars on a team. There's not many stars on a team, so they just grinded teams down. That was Bruce Cassidy, who was a former coach of the Bruins. And you've seen what happened with the Bruins in the playoffs. I mean, they went against a team that was another grimy team,
Yeah.
the Florida Panthers, and they grinded them down. And the number one seed was with the most points and the most wins in the regular season, and they got their ass kicked when it came down to it because that Florida Panthers team just they held their own. They did a damn good job of kind of like mucking it up, as they would say, and they did it the way that their coach wants them to, and that's the way that they played. And certain players will make you have a certain identity. Like Matthew Tkachuk will make you have a certain identity,
Right.
but it all comes from the coach. He's gonna tell someone like this is how I want it, and then there's gonna be players that kind of like make sure that happens on the ice.
Well, and you can see, we saw that you can still have winning teams regardless of your approach and kind of your personality or your style. I think that Scotty Bowman and Mike Babcock couldn't have been any more different too. Those two are two very different kind of guys, both intense, but both very different in their approach. And they both ended up with Stanley Cup championship teams, here in Detroit. And so why not Newsy Lalonde, right? He's different again than either one of them. And thank God. I mean, Babs wasn't my favorite. I'll be honest, and I think
Maybe being different than Mike Babcock is a good thing.
I think so. I did not my personal style, but it's funny because in my day job I work with managers or a manager in particular who's a lot like Mike Babcock, and as far as he's concerned, that's the way it ought to be. And I'm not like that. I'm more of a Scotty Bowman. I'm a little bit more of a I work differently, and neither one of us really understands each other's management styles, but that's okay. You don't need to, because you can have winning teams both ways. It's just a matter of getting your players to buy into it. And I believe that these players, like Dan Campbell's players, like his Lions, I think these Detroit Red Wings are ready to buy in to whatever Newsy Lalonde and Steve Yzerman are putting together here in terms of culture and identity. And that's the first step. That's what's important.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to go be a demonstrative type coach. I don't think that you need to be demonstrative. I don't think that you need to be demanding. I think that the kind of a psychological coaching aspect of sports is kind of changing. Guys like Bill Belichick and Scotty Bowman and Greg Popovich. It's turning now to more player coaches, like coaches that are players. So it's very interesting to figure that out. It's more of a player's game now. And I know a lot of people don't want to admit that because they still think like this is old time hockey, and you see it with football people too. They're like, oh, this is old time football, and it's like, guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but people are a little bit softer than they have been, and they like to look at these kids coming out of college for like college football, right?
Yeah.
Like they are told that they have the NIL now, so they're allowed to make money. And Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, was saying that they have to pay kids to go on a visit to that school. Well, when they get to the pros, they're in for a whole different kind of situation, because when they go to the pros, it's not going to be we're paying you to come here and we're gonna talk to you. No, we're paying you to come in here and you're gonna do your effing job or you're gonna be out, and that's the way it should be. And I think a lot of people, they think, oh, these coaches got to like beat their ass and like say things to them like Bill Belichick and Babcock and all that stuff. But these players are not built for that. They're not built for that. So having a guy like Coach Alone who can be hard, but also a player's coach, that's the kind of way you want to build your coaching staff. I mean, Jim Montgomery with Boston, he didn't do good with Dallas because they thought they said he was too hard on the players, and then he goes to Boston, he changes his approach, and they win games. So that tells you everything you need to know.
Well, and I think that Derek Lalonde understands that he needs guys that are not quite like him on his coaching staff. I mean, look at Scotty Bowman, had Barry Smith.
Yep.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
And, when the guys wanted to talk, they talked to Barry
Dave Lewis.
Yep. Dave Lewis. Yep. Again, a very mild guy, or, he's just a different kind of a guy. Barry Smith is a little more aggressive or whatever, but it's a matter of when you put together the team, it's not just your team on the ice, it's your team behind the bench too.
Well, I think that's why
I
think that's why this coaching staff has Bob Bugner on the coaching staff,
Right.
He's kind of more, he's a player and he used to be a player, and he's kind of more, he has that look to him like, I want to kick your ass. There's just some guys that have that look to them. Like, I just want to kick your ass. And look, this Red Wings team, I think that they're starting to match a more physical brand of hockey that they haven't had in years past. And I'm excited to see what they do in Ottawa, because I think that's going to be the game that you can go, okay, if they win this game or they play with them, I have high hopes for the season. And I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Cindy. I posted a tweet on my personal page, and then I sent it to Red Alert because we're trying to build a page.
Yeah.
The Sens only have 20 players right now. They're in such cap space hell that they can't even call up a player if they wanted to. So people that are saying that the Sens are going to be the team that is going to go to the playoffs, you can't win with 20 people on your roster. Okay? It just doesn't happen like that. And the fact of the matter is that Steve Yzerman, he has a full roster. He's managed the cap well enough to where he is not one of those cap space crunch teams.
Right.
And that's the difference. When we go through an 82 game season, people don't freaking realize this at all. It's like a football season too. You are going to have injuries. You are just going to have injuries. You're going to have to call up players. You're going to have to put people on LTIR. You're going to have to make some moves. You're going to have to do some things, but you have to continue to keep winning. Or, if you're having so many injuries, even just like staving off, a huge losing streak. You win a couple, then you lose two. You win a couple, you lose two. So you're 500 in that 8-game stretch. But a lot of people think that you need this, you're going to stay healthy the whole season. That's just not going to happen. I mean, the Maple Leafs are another team. They're up against the cap, with this cap crunch. So,
well, and credit to Steve Yzerman for managing that, because that's all him. The finances, the personnel availability, all that stuff. That's Steve Yzerman for you. So a lot of people look to Steve Yzerman to manage, handle, or be responsible for some of the coaching decisions or some of the players' decisions. And the reality is, he's responsible for the business decisions. He is responsible for making sure that his team that he's got out there, both as behind the bench and on the ice, that they have all of the resources they need to produce and to make the playoffs. That's what he's responsible for, and he's done that very, very well. Evidenced by the fact that these things are available, that we can call guys up, that we do have some cap space left. He was able to bring on a last minute veteran. When he did that, he had the cap space to do that. He had the resources to do that. So credit to Steve Yzerman there. And that's exactly what he gets paid the big bucks for.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think, Joe, the one thing that, and I don't know if we're getting ready to wrap this up. I know that I've got to scoot here, but the one thing that I would like to wrap up with, and then you can close us out, but is that the Red Wings are headed in the right direction. Despite that first period against Tampa Bay where there was some concerns, despite the fact they lost against New Jersey, which, by the way, I think they played well. I think that they are headed in the right direction, and I see a lot of really good signs coming out of these first 3 games.
Yeah, so going on back on my thing about this, it's 1 week into the season, 14 teams do not have enough cap space right now to call up one player. One of those teams is the Ottawa Senators, only has 20 active players. You're obviously allowed you're allowed 23. So if you have 20 players on your roster, you're missing 3 players. Think of how hard that hurts. So yeah, I agree with you what you just said. But you got more?
Nope, that's it. I just wanted to let you know kind of what my thoughts were. I mean, I think we still need to wait and see. It's still a wait and see. I'm not ready to drink the red Kool-Aid. I won't take the little red pill just yet. We were talking earlier pre-show about the little red and the little blue pill here in Detroit, and people have more than one reason to take a blue pill. I'm not really. guys my age, not guys your age.
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised.
That's what I hear. That's nuts. But the little red pill, the one that we'd all like to take, drinking the red Kool-Aid, not yet, but they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and if we look ahead, tomorrow they play the Pittsburgh Penguins. Saturday they play the Ottawa Senators in Ottawa. They play Sunday, so back to back. That's tough. We'll probably have a podcast on Wednesday. Sunday they play the Calgary Flames, and then Tuesday they play the Seattle Kraken. So they have 3 home games, 1 road game. You were talking about being better at home. This stretch is kind of winnable, especially when you think about the Calgary Flames, who they're kind of like a rebuilding type team. They've had to, they got rid of Toffoli last year. He went to the Devils. They had some players. They have guys that they have bad contracts on the roster. They're kind of like the old Red Wings, where they're kind of just in the they're in no man's land. So, look, if you're a Red Wings fan and you're thinking that this is different, it might be different, but you're gonna know in the next 4 games if it is truly different. Because if you can win a game against Pittsburgh, if you can go win a game like Calgary and Kraken, and maybe you just sweep the board, wouldn't
that be something?
That would be nice. But if you can win,
awesome.
If you can go 3-1, 2-2, that's a win, because you're talking about, you by Thanksgiving you want to be in playoff position. That's the goal. And if you look at every playoff team, that's the barometer they go to, the Thanksgiving break, when you go into that Thanksgiving game. Usually the Red Wings play on a Wednesday, so you'll know where they are at that point in time, and that's where you're going to kind of gauge of where they're going to be going throughout the season.
Well, we'll have a lot to talk about next week to see how it shakes out against Ottawa, and a couple other interesting teams are playing. I think the Kraken's going to be an interesting game too to watch. So let's see if the Red Wings can continue the trajectory, and then we can keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, this is a short podcast this time because obviously Cindy has to run. Also, we're talking about 3 games, so let's continue to build this thing and see what's going to happen going forward. But this Red Wings team right now, I think, has a little bit of things going for them. Let's see if the Brinket can keep it going, Comfort can keep it going, maybe someone along the way goes. And Robbie Fabry is another guy I wanted to talk about really quick. He needs to stay healthy. That guy, he can't catch a break.
I know. I thought the same thing. I'm like, how much I think Robbie Fabry has been on the IR list more than he's been on the ice with us since he got here, which is too bad, because he's got a lot to offer.
He's a great player, a great person. But him being
stay healthy.
But you got to stay healthy. Availability is your best ability. So we're going to be talking about that and more on the next Red Alert podcast. Obviously, if you're new to the channel, you can follow our Facebook page, Red Alert Detroit Red Wings Podcast, or you can go on Instagram. It's Red Alert Detroit Red Wings Podcast. And we will see you guys in the next podcast where we talk about Detroit Red Wings hockey. So we will see you soon. Have a good one, and then we will see you next week. And I'll have daily videos on the Red Wings too. I'm gonna keep doing that. So stay tuned to that. Cindy, play them out.
See you then.
We will see you guys next week on another episode of Red Alert.